Quite a number of years ago now, I made a video in this channel called Why I Stopped Reading Tarot for Others. And I kind of think of it as being one of my more controversial videos. Not that I have very many controversial videos, just because it received a relatively high number of downvotes. But I do suspect that most of those downvotes were actually coming from outside of this community, outside my normal viewership. It seemed that that video made its way into the recommendations of kind of conservative Christians and other groups of people who consider tarot to be kind of devil worship, or, you know, just something that is not a good idea spiritually to be doing. So I think that that's actually where most of those downvotes ended up coming from. But at the same time, it was coming off the back of a long period of struggle that I had with figuring out how I thought about tarot, how I believed that it worked, and really what my ethical problems were with it when it came to using it to read for other people, and especially in terms of being a professional tarot reader. So many of you will probably remember, or if you don't remember, if you weren't around at the time, you've probably seen videos in which I reference this, but I was a professional tarot reader for a few years. I mean, professional tarot reader, it was something that I was mostly doing part-time on the side. I also had a part-time job at that time as well. But it was something that I was really focused on for a number of years and aiming to do professionally, that I believed that was something that I really wanted to focus on as part of a kind of a creative spiritual type career. And it just didn't really pan out for me at that time. I realised after I started seeking money for readings that I had some kind of ethical conundrums that had been less clear, they had been less problematic maybe when I was doing readings for free. And that is often the case. I often find that once you start looking for money for something, it really will bring to light any discomfort that you have, any kind of reservations that you might have. And it can be difficult to kind of disentangle that from kind of other kind of hesitations that you might have, from a lack of self-worth or valuing yourself, and imposter syndrome and so on. But after a while I could tell that there was something a little bit more going on in me than just straightforward imposter syndrome. Even though I was, largely speaking, very happy with the readings that I was doing for people, I was receiving very good feedback, you know, there was nothing really untoward going on in an obvious way. So it took me a long time to figure it out, and I kind of kept changing the way that I did readings to try and sort it out. And in the end, I just came to a decision, no, like I'm not somebody who's going to be able to do readings for other people. If you haven't seen that video, and if you're not interested in going and watching it, I'll link it up so you can, up there in the thingy-bob, so you can go and watch it if you're interested. But essentially my problem was that because I don't particularly buy into the kind of intuition model, I don't really believe that I, as an individual, can connect in a spiritual way to other people and other people's situations in a meaningful way, and therefore use the cards to kind of extrapolate on someone's situation without really knowing anything about it. It made me a little bit uncomfortable to be kind of seen to be offering advice that that had a certain weight of authority to it. So I think when you add tarot into the mix, there is this kind of implication that the tarot cards are helping you tap into a kind of a spiritual intuition, a higher kind of knowledge or certainty about the world and about what's going on, and then you can have a normal understanding. And I continued to think that this is very, very helpful for the individual reading for themselves. And I certainly have, I've got absolutely no contention with anyone who does actually do tarot readings for a living. And as I've said in that video and in various other videos as well, I've had tarot readings done for myself by other people online as well, and found them to be very valuable. But there was specifically this problem when it came to my own belief, my own lack of belief in that kind of intuitive ability to tap into someone else's life and someone else's needs and just someone else's emotional sphere. I didn't like the idea that I was maybe implying, even though I was always very clear with my beliefs and how I believed that tarot worked and so on, I didn't like that there was an implication through using the cards that I, had some sort of higher understanding of what was going on in that person's life, and that therefore the advice that I could be giving them through the cards could be seen as kind of just a better answer to problems than they might come up with themselves, I suppose. So largely speaking, I still stand by that statement. I do think that at that time, and with the kind of readings that I was doing, that was the right decision, and that was what sat right for me, and I definitely don't regret that. But then I kind of carried on sort of for many years after that, occasionally or kind of intermittently trying to grapple with how I could use the cards in a meaningful way, how I could maybe be of service to other people in particular when it came to those cards. And I think I mentioned in a video recently, it might have been the video about motivation, that I found that once I wasn't using the cards for other people, I wasn't really motivated to be using them for myself so much either. And over time, I have also just felt like one of the biggest enjoyments that I get out of the cards is kind of the interactivity with other people, and just how enjoyable it is to use the cards as an interface to engage with others, to engage with other people's issues or problems or questions and so on. And that was always a really exciting element to me. And I realised that I wasn't really fully satisfied with letting that drop entirely, and that it felt like really just a gap in what tarot could be for me if I really wasn't going to ever delve into that. But I have been kind of in the back of my mind, on and off, and at various points over the last few years, I have been kind of toying with different ideas about how I might invigorate tarot for myself again, and just new and slightly kind of unorthodox ways of approaching the cards, approaching tarot readings and so on. It is something that's been kind of percolating in the back of my mind. And, most of that has been focused on the idea of reading for myself, but a lot of it also has been kind of percolating around reading for other people. And one of the things that I started to really hone in on and realise was that a large part of my concerns and issues around reading for others is when a tarot reading pertains to kind of specific practical, material, like this worldly concerns. When a tarot reading is around, like let's say there was a tarot reading about a relationship with another person or so on, I tended to shy away from those kind of readings anyway. That was pretty much in my policy, that it had to be very much person focused. But also, even in terms of person focused, if somebody's trying to make a decision about leaving a job, starting a new career, moving house, readdressing kind of their feelings around a certain relationship, all of those things feel relatively concrete to me, and they feel relatively connected to kind of the mundane world. And from my experience, a huge amount of tarot readings tend to be focused on that kind of thing. It's kind of the classic approach to the cards is to ask those kinds of questions in this sort of fortune-telling, divination kind of manner. There does tend to be this tendency to ask a question that the universe is going to provide an answer to. And I kind of realised that, that's a model that I kept kind of coming back to, and almost like a trap that I kept falling into, and no matter how many times I tried to pull away from it, I kept trying to find a different way, a different approach, a different kind of mode, and I finally realised that was kind of perhaps the solution, was to shift away completely from allowing somebody to kind of ask a very general question and instead focus on what is actually kind of my expertise, I suppose, and what is turning into my expertise as time goes on, and that is kind of spiritual insights and delving into what a person's spiritual ideas are, and how they can kind of construct or shape or kind of put words on, or put shape to, and kind of put symbols onto and so on, their own kind of worldview, their own spiritual worldview. Basically, I realised that when I reach for the cards now, sometimes it is to kind of explore the depths of my own psyche and my own kind of what's going on in my own emotions and what's going on in my unconscious and that kind of thing. Sometimes it's that, but then a lot of the time as well, it's just that I kind of want a little spiritual pick-me-up. I want just to kind of, like a person might kind of flick through a Bible or flip through a sacred text in order to find kind of an inspiring quote, an inspiring passage. I might kind of think to myself, you know, what do I need spiritually right now? How can I address my spiritual life right now? How is it that I need to kind of turn my mind, or where do I need to focus on to reinvigorate myself, or just kind of vague spiritually related questions like that. More often than not, that is why I reach for the cards, and I find that to be probably the most valuable way for me to use them right now. So of course for me, the kind of more self-focused, the more kind of exploring the psyche side of reading tarot cards. For me, you know, as I said, I still stand by that statement that I made many years ago, and for me that doesn't work for reading for other people. If I were to do that, I've done that kind of reading sometimes in person with people, but it's much easier to do in person when you can really allow the other person to talk and really allow the cards to just draw stuff out of the other person rather than kind of presenting them with pre-packaged ideas. And so, yeah, I kind of have I've just come to the conclusion that I don't think that kind of reading is ever going to work for me, that's ever going to sit completely right with me. But this other kind of side, this area of using the cards as a sort of, not as a bibliomancy, because I feel like you know, the art of bibliomancy, where traditionally the Bible, but people do use other texts for this too, just any book sometimes, where you kind of ask a question and then flick through the Bible for the answer. I do use that one as a party game, you know, with the big caveat of like, I don't necessarily believe that this is true and so on, like literally going to be fortune telling, but it is a very, very fun party trick. I probably have mentioned that before in the channel. There was one Christmas party I was at some years ago, and I used the Deathly Hallows as, I think for some reason, books that are very familiar to me work best for this, and I kind of answered people's questions from around the room to great response. It worked uncannily well, so it is fun if you want to ever try it that way. But I'm thinking more in a more sort of when you're in that kind of mental state of spiritual contemplation, when you're just looking for something to tap you into your sense of awe and devotion, and give you kind of questions and ideas to mull over and think through and sort of try to apply to your life, and try to apply spiritual ideas to your everyday life. That's the kind of angle that I'm thinking, and that's the kind of I think maybe particularly valuable way that I've been using the cards, that I might actually be able to find a way to translate for other people, because my way of thinking about this is that, this is what I've noticed when I'm drawing the cards in this way, the ideas that I'm coming up with are quite universal. It's almost as though I'm just using the cards to paint a relatively specific picture of my own worldview, my own kind of theology, I suppose, for want of a better word. I'm using the cards to kind of just draw out pre-existing ideas I have about divinity and about you know, the sacred nature of cosmos and so on. And so any statements that I end up making, you know, if I'm journaling on this and so on, they are kind of quite general. They're quite you know, big picture in nature, and I feel in that way that offering up the kind of musings that I come up with through drawing cards in that way, it doesn't strike me as unethical from my perspective whatsoever. It strikes me as a perfectly natural thing that I might do, and not a million miles away from just, you know, writing a blog post or making a YouTube video about a specific spiritual issue or spiritual quest, or and so on. And so I'm actually getting really curious about how this might work if I were to do this as a kind of individual reading for another person, and you know, having the kind of freedom to have maybe a specific question with a bit of background to it, and to be able to apply it to another person and see how this works. So I'm very excited about this idea. So I'm very seriously considering in the new year that I might initially just offer a couple of free readings or something to to kind of test the waters and try it out and so on, and then maybe offer readings after that for sale if I feel like it goes well, and once I'm happy with the process. So yeah, I'm very strongly considering this, and as usual, I'll probably I will roll that out through the newsletter. So I'll have a link for you to join the newsletter down below. I generally send one email per month, and it's kind of a bit of a kind of a personal musing on my life, my spiritual life, and what's going on. That's kind of where I will do kind of any major updates like that. That's how I rolled out the spiritual mentoring, and which will be rolled out just more broadly in the coming months. But anything new like that I'm kind of playing with, I find that the newsletter is a great place to kind of get things like that going and give people the opportunity to try something out at a lower cost or for free and so on. So yeah, I'm very seriously contemplating this, and I do think that I am going to make more videos about this as I dig into this in my own practice for myself. I've had kind of not a lot of time in the last few months between finishing up the PhD and trying to get other things going. I haven't really had the time to be really investing into my own tarot reading for myself, which is kind of why I haven't done as much of this yet as I would like. But I do have various different ideas that I want to try for myself, so I will make more videos on this as I kind of progress with that. So yeah, I think for the first time in 5 years I'm going to revoke my statement that I will no longer be reading tarot for others. It may be that after some time I decide that reading for others actually doesn't really work as well as I hoped it might in this way, and maybe reading for myself will always be the kind of main way that I use tarot from now on. And you know, I do hope in the future as well, if I ever do kind of get back into a really dedicated tarot practice for myself, I do hope to create content around that, and you know, maybe write an ebook or an e-course or something for people as well to focus on developing your reading for yourself, specifically for yourself, because I think that's something that a lot of teachers don't really focus on a huge amount. Some people do, and some people definitely don't, because, you know, as you probably know, a lot of tarot readers actually don't believe that you should read for yourself. So of course then they're not going to be focusing on teaching you to read for yourself if that's something that they don't believe is a good idea. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now. You can very definitely expect to hear from me about this topic again in the future. Yeah, do let me know any of your thoughts on this. What are your first instincts? Do you read tarot? If you do, what's your relationship with it? I'd love to know. So I'm pre-recording this, and I think I'm going to be posting it after the new year. So I hope you've all had a really wonderful Yule period and a really wonderful New Year's. Whatever it is that you've been doing, presumably it's been very quiet. I hope it hasn't been too sad for you, whatever you've been. I mean, all of us pretty much have things that we've been restricted from doing this year, and I hope that has not been too sad for you. I hope that you've been able to have a pleasant time regardless and despite everything. But yeah, I've been spending it with my parents. Our plan is to, you know, we had a quiet Christmas period, just the three of us, and you know, speaking from the past, because I'm pre-recording this, I'm recording this in December, I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that you've all managed to do something nice as well, even within the restrictions that you may have depending on where you are in the world. So yeah, I'm quietly optimistic for 2021. That's my choice. I always try to choose to be optimistic where possible. I'm hoping that we'll be on a more upward trajectory this year. But yeah, I'll leave it there. I will be back to you again next week. Yeah, I will look forward to talking to you then.